Welcome to the program. This evening I am happy to introduce to you a former Catholic who has a great love for Catholics and actual fact goes back to the nation where I spent most of my years as a Catholic priest, 21 years, Trinidad. And in talking to Clarence, I find that he knows Trinidad, and we can talk about names of different towns and cities and feel quite comfortable speaking of our love for the Catholics. And in Trinidad and Tobago, those two islands that are one nation. So I want to hear Clarence's testimony, and so I've asked him to share with you today so that we could feel the joy of his salvation. Somebody who, as he will explain to you, did not really find anything in religion, but now finds a fullness of life in Christ Jesus. Welcome, Clarence Haflin, to the program.
Thank you.
And Clarence, to begin with, can you tell which state and which city or town you grew up with here in the United States, and who your parents were?
I was born in Hamilton, New York, which is upstate New York in the country. I'm a farm boy, and my father is Clarence and Thelma, my mother, Haflin, and grew up in rural New York.
And was this a Catholic family, and were you Catholic practices, or were you going to Mass and getting ready for sacraments, and did you know anything about being an altar boy or serving the priests in the church? Had you anything to do with all those traditional Catholic values that are known so well?
Yes, I'd say that, especially in my earlier life, we were more, as a family, devout in Catholicism. I was raised Catholic. In my younger life, I can remember we were in church every Sunday and went to Mass and communion. I remember my first communion, confession, and different sacraments of the church. I was an altar boy for probably about 6 years, and served in the church.
As an altar boy and as a Catholic, can you remember anything about your first communion or your confirmation? Did that have an impact on you?
I would say that I can remember it, certainly, but it didn't really have an impact on my life. It was something that I did because everybody else in my class was doing it. I didn't understand the importance of it. There was nothing on the inside of me that compelled me to do it. It was just something that I was supposed to do.
Did you pray the rosary or do any of the Catholic devotionals at home?
We didn't pray the rosary in our home as I was growing up, although, like I said, we'd go to Mass, we'd go to confession, holy days of obligation and such as that.
But did you find any satisfaction or any fulfillment in all that you were doing as a young person? Did you say, well, this makes sense and this is helping me, and areas of my life as a young person, I'm learning about Jesus Christ and I'm growing in my love for Jesus Christ and for God and the Father, and I'm advancing in wisdom and holiness before God? Did you feel any fulfillment in the things that you were doing?
I did go to catechism class and was instructed, in religious education. It was more facts and figures. It wasn't precious to me at that point of my life. It was more something I did because that's what I was expected to do, and that's what everyone else did. And it was more, I guess, unpersonal.
Yes. Did it keep you out of the wayward lifestyle at your age group? Drugs were coming in, and from the 60s on, we had this really de-evolution of society, and people getting into drugs and all types of, immoral behavior. Did your Catholic practices preserve you from those things in your early teenage days?
No, actually, in many ways, it left me, I'd say, more prey towards it, because, I would have thought in my reasoning as a young person that I had tried religion and I had gone to church, and it hadn't done anything for me personally. It was more exterior, it was more something outside, like religion, and it left a great void in my life. Even as a very young person, very young, I can remember saying, there's got to be more to life than this. There's something missing. Mm-hmm. And so because of that void in my life, I began to seek after drugs and alcohol and that kind of lifestyle, simply because I was searching for something real, something that would make a difference in my life, something that would last and work and fulfill the real inner need of my being.
Well, how far did you go? Some people, did one or two marijuana joints and just went on with life as usual. But did you get deeply into these things, or was it just casual, touching of drugs?
Well, it usually starts out very casually, but I started with drugs and alcohol about 12 years old, and it grew much more intense to where there was some years of my life when there was never a moment when I wasn't under the influence of drugs. And so I did get quite involved with hard drugs and with crime, with alcohol, riding with motorcycle gangs, and a whole lifestyle that I was searching and said, there's got to be something more. And so I probably went way off onto the left side of the base.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know some of the stories of some of the things that happen with those motorcycle gangs and the people ODing on drugs and everything. Did you actually ever OD or find yourself waking up, after having a bad night the night before?
Yes, many times. I think back on it and know that the grace of God spared my life so many times, and that God had a purpose in sparing my life. And though I was so empty and so lost and so deceived, God's grace was still there to me as a lost person.
Yes. Well, how did the grace of God break through? I know I'm speaking for the listener, Clarence, who wants to know about you. How did the grace of God penetrate you, who are a calloused, hardened sinner? You've been 12 years old and into your teens, from what I gathered that you say, many years living in drugs and wickedness and crime. That is callous, it's hardened, type of wicked lifestyle. And how did the grace of God penetrate, through the hard shell that you had built up, in these sinful ways?
I have to summarize, I guess, a bit here, but God had to bring me to the end of myself. Many of the things that I sought after disappointed me. And again, that question I had, where's it really at? It's like the world and religion and the philosophies of the world will paint beautiful pictures. Have this or do that, and you'll be happy. And I'd go there and I wasn't happy. It was like a mirage. I drank of many things, but I was still thirsty. And I tried many things, but one after another, if I can just have this or do this or accomplish that, I'll be happy. I became very discouraged and disappointed in all those things. And I guess probably one of the giant factors in my life, after riding with gangs, and I ended up in Florida. My brother Leo, who's 4 years older than me, and myself took jobs on big farms in Florida, and we milked 1,000 cows. And while we were there, we were kind of isolated from many of the influences we had back home. And my brother